Thank you everyone for coming. Tonight's school board training is effective candidate evaluation and community engagement, strengthening school board decision making. So I always have problems with advancing. I don't know why it's not letting me advance. So let me stop sharing and sharing again. I love technology.
If you'd like to send the presentation to me, I could share it and click through if you'd like.
Let me see. I think start from the beginning. Let me just try one more time. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so this is our mission and our vision of First Aid Educate. So those of you that don't know who First Aid Educate is, we are a nonprofit association, and our focus is on actually on school boards and empowering Delawareans to be engaged in local level decision making that directly impacts school governance, which obviously is school boards, catalyzing community involvement to drive improvements in student outcomes. So a really big part of our mission is the relationship between school boards and the community. And our vision is where Delawareans can actively shape school governance, having a say, driving data-informed decisions that ensure that every student has access to an education that prepares them for a productive and fulfilling life. Okay, so today's session is we're trying to create a space for collaborative problem solving, like I said, working together, community and school boards, promoting transparency and a mutual understanding of bringing diverse perspectives into a shared conversation, encouraging joint exploration of solutions. So it's not a one size fits all, because we really need to have multiple solutions to the challenges in our school system, especially in this environment. We want to foster relationships that lead to actual changes to improve student outcomes and to improve school governance, so oversight, and support an open dialogue on important topics. So first thing I want to do is sort of poll the room and ask you, how prepared do you feel to evaluate and select the best candidate in a school board election? So you can put that in the chat, or you can just unmute and tell me what you think, because we're a small group. Anybody?
I would say that people in general are ill prepared, but not through anyone's fault. It's just that there are not a lot of forums out there to share where people can get involved, and they sort of find out things, I guess, by word of mouth or rumor, and that is, or if they know somebody, that seems to be the way that it's done now. I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel prepared because I know myself, but
Right.
but
But you've served for the last 6 years, right?
yeah. But before I was on the board, when I was just a community member going out and voting, I didn't really have a lot to go on.
Yeah. So anybody else?
Yeah, I would say too, the level of interest, I know we've talked about that before, but considering that the constituency involves parents with kids, and people without kids, the people without kids I'm making a generalization, but may not be as interested in even learning about this because frankly, they don't feel as if there's a personal stake involved. I mean, we all feel that there is, but those people without kids may just not be paying attention to this. They're not going to hear it. They don't have somebody coming home from school saying, "Hey, there's an election" or anything like that.
Really good, both really good points. So this is actually how First Aid Educate started, because there isn't anybody out there that's really doing this work, providing training, giving, people. I think Joyce's point is really well taken. People run for school board and where is there a place to go to get information, right? And that's what First Aid Educate is able to provide. And as we go through the presentation, we'll see more about that. So thank you for sharing. So tonight's session, these are our overviews and our objectives for tonight. And I'm not going to read them, but I'd love for you to tell me, out of these four, what you think you would like to get out of tonight's presentation. You can just unmute and say.
I like them all, but I think the structured evaluation tools would be interesting
Yeah,
with a rubric.
I
yeah,
agree with that too.
Yeah.
yes.
Something somewhat objective. It's not totally objective, but it approaches objectivity.
Yeah.
Great. I think it's important, and like you said, Joyce, people, there's such a poor turnout for school board elections. And I think when people, I always tell this to people, when someone goes to the polls, so different than a general election, you're going to the polls, you know who you're voting for, you know you're going to vote in a school board election. And this is why, the general election, some people walking in, they're going to vote, let's say, for president and governor, but they don't know who they're voting for other things. And there might be people standing outside, and that's how they decide. It's really different in a school board election. That's why it's important, because obviously those of you that are already serving and are going to serve understand this is a huge responsibility and you don't get paid. So you really have to be passionate about it, right? Because you're making huge decisions that affect the outcomes of children and the outcomes of what's happening in our staff with our teachers and our educators. So it's really important for folks to really educate themselves before they go to the polls. Okay, so evaluating a school board candidate running for office. So the key criteria. So first, where does the candidate stand? So you want to ask questions about where they stand on things that might be important to you, or that you might be attending school board meetings and you're hearing things. So I'm going to pick on Brandywine since we have two candidates here from Brandywine tonight. So I think a big thing that might come up is all the stuff going on with the teacher contract, right? That's a position, and what's happening with that, you want to educate yourself on that, because a voter has either been to the school board meeting, listened to the school board meeting on Zoom, and there's been a lot of press around that. So that might be a question that comes up because there has been so much, controversy. I don't know if it's a good word to use, but there has been a lot of attention to that. So that's an example of where does the candidate stand on those. So that's an important thing. And of course, other things, policies. Right now, our country's facing a lot of uncertainty with federal funding cuts. So things like child nutrition, Title I, Title IX, Title IX was a big conversation at your school board meeting on Monday night in Brandywine, right? So I think that these are really important things. As candidates, you really need to know what the policies are and have positions, because people might ask you, right, if you're door knocking or having a conversation or during a forum or whatever. Also, looking at what the candidate's background and skills are. I always say that it's great when you look at a school board and you have different people bring different perspectives, right? Some have a legal background, some have been former educators or administrators, some have background in HR, they might be in banking. And so looking at the big picture about what are those competencies that the school board candidate is bringing to the already sitting folks on the school board. I think that's really important. What are your leadership qualities? Are you showing integrity, accountability, and collaboration? These three things is what you have to be able to work together. You're never going to always agree. It's just not it. You all know that this is life, but we all need to know when to compromise and collaborate to come up with a solution. Because at the end of the day, the decisions should always be thinking about, is this going to help the students in the schools? Is the candidate a good communicator? And when I say that, so if it's a returning person, has that school board member been responsive, to the community? The last thing you ever want anyone to say is, I emailed the school board and they didn't respond, or I called my school board, one of the school board members and they didn't respond to me. Being responsive, you are never going to have all the answers, but you can always say, thank you for, reaching out to me. I'm not sure, but I'll get back to you. That goes a million miles than to just ignore someone. I believe responsiveness is a key to communication. And talk about, if the candidate made promises during their campaign, are they keeping their promises? Are they voting in the way they say they're going to vote, right? So I know things change, But if someone is saying, oh, I support such and such, and then they come to the board meeting and they vote against that, something that you literally supported them because they were doing that, that's disturbing. So you need to, and how you can find this information is just, I think I mentioned this on our last training. Every school board meeting has to be digitally recorded by law. It's a law in Delaware. And they're all recorded, and you can go back and listen. And I believe they're posted for a minimum of a year, and it could be longer. And that's part of our Freedom of Information Act, and it is a law. So you can always go back and listen if you not, because you don't get much from minutes. You really don't, because minutes are very vague, like an action, an action item brought up, there was a vote, this is the roll call, and this passed. Like, it doesn't really give you, it does tell you how people voted, but it doesn't tell you about the conversation. So you need to listen to those meetings. Okay, so gathering and analyzing information. What are important things? Well, research official records. Like I just said, you could go on to any school district. I'm pretty sure all of our school districts in Delaware, except maybe 2, use board docs. And board docs have 2 sections. There's one for the public and one for the school board. So obviously confidential things and discipline, contract information is all in just for the school board. But the others, their board docs, they might be presentations that the school district is making at the school board meeting. So it's important to know where those are on the website of the school district and go to them. I just talked about the digital recordings, and you can look at past meeting minutes. Another way to analyze things is a lot of folks use literature when they're door knocking. Read their literature. Don't just put it in the recycle. If you're at like a civic meeting and school board candidates are there, or at a forum, they might have trifolds, and they give you what their platform is. So they tell you who they are, what they're going to do, and why they're running. And that's important stuff to read, because that's how you can compare candidates if there's a race. And then utilize nonprofit resources. So we have, at First Aid Educate, we partner with ACLU, League of Women Voters, the PTA, Indivisible, and others. And all of these associations have resources on their websites. So as you know, because I sent everybody an email and about the surveys, right? And so that is, we're doing it, First Aid Educate's doing it, ACLU is doing it, League of Women Voters. I know others are, but those 3 I know are all posted on a website. And as they come in, they're posted, and then people can go on. I love the way we're going to be presenting them, because we have them by district. And then obviously in Newcastle County, and the couple, one in Kent, one in Sussex, have nominating districts. And we're literally having it posted so that people can compare. So let's just use Red Clay as an example, because there's no one here from Red Clay. They're actually having a school board meeting tonight. So there's one race. And so when those 2 gentlemen put their surveys in, it'll say Red Clay. There'll be a drop down. Each of them will be right next to each other with the same exact question. And people just have to look and compare the answers. And it makes it really easy. So those are really good resources to, if you're a candidate, to tell folks to go to, right, to get the information. Or if you're looking to see who you should vote for, that's another good way to share information. So really important is you got to attend forums. If you're invited as a candidate, you got to go. You got to make the time to go to forums. It's important. A lot of them are virtual, but if they're in person, like I know a lot of civic associations will invite the school board. I think school boards this year especially have a lot of attention to them. I'm sure you all saw the bill that was introduced yesterday. Have you all seen that? I'm just curious. Okay, there's 2 bills that are up right now for discussion in Dover. One is about continuing to have a Zoom option going forward for public comment and viewing, right? There are some districts that are not allowing Zoom now for public comment. So that's a bill that's coming up. Then there's another bill that was introduced yesterday, has 4 parts to it. It's about training and professional development. Of course, I love that. There's also about if you move out of a district or nominating district, you can't serve in that district. So there's many parts to it. You can't come. Some school board members are coming to their meetings via Zoom every month. That's going to go away too if this bill passes. So it's important that I think there's a lot of attention to school boards this year. And I love that because it's an important role. So it's important that you do whatever you can to attend what you need to attend. If there are forums, if a civic association, a Rotary, whatever invites you, the PTA asks you to come to their meeting, and all the candidates that are running should be invited. There shouldn't be any preferences, but you got to show up because that is the way you're going to get your name out there. Because again, there's not a lot of attention on school board elections because of when it is, second Tuesday of May. You want to discuss with the community what you represent, and how you do that would be door knocking in neighborhoods, going to civic things, even having a coffee at Panera where you invite people to come talk to you. Use these 7 weeks to really connect with the community. I'm telling you, that is how you can win your school board election. Again, attend candidate forums, anything you're invited to, and learn about candidates. And even if you're running, you might have, like in Brandywine, you have 3 seats up, right? And you can vote for all 3 because when you're you have a nominating district, Joyce, you're in a district that's at large. 1 seat's up and there's 1 election. But in Brandywine, they have 3 seats up, but anyone in the district can vote. So you can all vote if you live in the Brandywine School District for 3 seats. And it's confusing to people. Every year this question comes up. So I just want to be clear about it. Go on to social media. People have Facebook pages, or they have websites, or they have a LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever it is. They all have social media. I mean, social media is very important. It's your best friend in a school board election because it gets the information out very quickly. You can do it from your phone, and there's only 7 weeks, not a big window of opportunities. And try to read all the literature that you get. I know sometimes you get the literature, like I don't know about you, but in November, I would get the literature. I would walk in the house and put it right into the recycle because you get a lot of it then. But in school board elections, you're not saturated. So you should try and really see those things. Okay. So how does the candidate's platform align with the priorities and values of the community? This is an important question because you want to think about how the candidate platform is working with how the community, is the community concerned about teacher shortages? Is the community concerned about discipline in the schools? So if there's no mention in a candidate's platform about those things, that means that the candidate might not have done their homework, and you want someone who's really in touch with what's happening, because it's like a very cyclical school boards. I can remember 5 years ago, the only thing that people talked about in the school board election, it was right at the beginning of COVID, was SROs. If you don't know what an SRO is, it's a student resource officer. Get rid of SROs. That's all people talked about in the school board election. It brought out a ton of voters. That was a big year for school board elections. They had a lot of voters. The election didn't happen in May because the pandemic was March and we couldn't have an election. So it was in July. They had to move it to July, and there was a tremendous turnout, and everything was about the SROs. So and people are still talking about SROs, but it's not like a main thing, right? Today's day and age, it's about, again, the federal cut. How are those federal cuts going to affect our school boards? Teacher shortages and teacher pay, big one. Discipline in schools, school climate, and those kinds of things. So do your homework and know what those issues are so that your values and priorities align with what your constituents want to hear about. So here are some possible questions to ask candidates. What are the most important issues facing your school districts right now? This is an important thing for you to think about because, again, You need to be aligned with that. How do you feel about the current state of your school district? Even if you're an incumbent, maybe you're not happy with some things that are going on, and then you want to offer some possible solutions to that. Never bring anything up unless you can offer a solution. I'm a big believer that you ask questions, but you absolutely should offer resolutions to everything so that you're not just complaining. You're saying, this is an issue and this is how I'm going to solve it. Do you feel that families and communities have a voice with the school board decisions? And that goes for a lot when policies are made, for example. I'm going to use Brandywine as an example, and I'm not trying to pick on you, but I just went to that meeting Monday, so I know there was a discussion about your Title IX policy. And to my knowledge, there was not an outreach to the community to get input. And that's wrong. When a policy is being introduced, and Joyce can attest to this, there should be a first and second read, which I know they did have, but they also should be asking the community for input because the policies affect everyone. So that's important too. And what possible changes would you think about to change with school board how they communicate? Like, are they communicating well with their constituents? Okay, if I'm talking too fast, let me know because I do tend to talk a lot, talk too fast. Okay, so how do you apply a structured evaluation framework? So again, to me, a school board member's platform is their blueprint. It's how, that's going to give you an overview of what the school board member has done or plans to do. Again, you should look at their social media pages and ask questions from that. I saw on your Facebook page that you're intending to do so and so, and you should ask questions about that. And again, the survey results that you all are filling out, but that also we have that are going to be posted on the variety of organizations platforms that I just mentioned. That's important to read those things because again, you can measure them. Important again to align. The candidates should be aligning their platform to the priorities of the school district and the community at large. And how clear is the candidate? Are they communicating clearly? Are they addressing concerns? So if a question's asked and they're not being clear, that's, you want to get clarity from the candidate. How is the candidate demonstrating leadership or problem-solving skills? Like, are they offering solutions, like I just said? This is a big one. Is their messaging consistent across the board? Like, Brian, are you talking to me and telling me one thing and then going to someone else and telling another, right? You want to be consistent across all channels. And pay attention. Some people, this is not school board, but I'm going to give you an example. I think you might all know this, but I'm the president of the National PTA. We have 3 million members, and last year we had to go for a dues increase. And during our election, somebody asked a candidate, are you supporting the dues increase? And the candidate said, what dues increase? Well, in a million years, why would anybody vote for somebody? This was such a huge thing in our association last year. That is an example of how you have to be in tuned to what's going on in your organization, in your school district, because that's very telling. And we hope that you'll attend our school board forums if we're having one in your school district, and we want everybody to hear from the candidates themselves. So here is, we have school board capacity blueprints on our website. So if you don't know our website, it's firstadeducate.org. It's right here at the bottom. And we have a whole page on school board members. And we have a blueprint, which I would love for you to go on. And we don't have enough time tonight, but go on and peruse after this and look at it. It will help you even look at the key competencies that are very important in a school board member. We also have scorecards. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is APOS, and they got an A+. So basically, this is a scorecard. We do this, and we base this on, remember I said earlier, so everybody brings something different to the table. So here, there is someone that's got a legal background, but maybe not someone with a finance background or HR, a former educator administrator. Is there a student rep? Some school districts have student reps, APO does not. Um, nonprofit grant experience. Yes, they have that. So see how these are all different competencies or things that they bring to the table so that when you're deciding maybe this new person that's running has HR background or has finance. So those are things you want to think about. So an incumbent school board candidate, these are just things to think about. Do they execute their duties? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are they meaningfully engaging families and communities? And when I say that, when somebody from the community comes to a school board meeting and speaks in public comment, a lot of times they don't understand that a school board meeting is a meeting held in the public. They don't respond. So, and Joyce, you know this because you're a school board member, right? When someone comes to they get 2 or 3 minutes, whatever the district's policy is, and they speak. And it's usually they want to talk about something that's happening with their child, or they're concerned about a policy that's going to be adopted, or whatever it is. There is no response from the school board. It shouldn't be, that is not the time to respond. They listen and they should listen. But then the school board member maybe writes their name down because everyone has to sign up for public comment, so they have contact, and maybe contact that constituent at a later time. So that would be a way to engage families. A lot of times our school districts really say they want family engagement, but they're not having meaningful family engagement. Is the superintendent being evaluated? Believe it or not, I am not exaggerating. There are school districts that have not evaluated their superintendent in over 10 years. That's not fair to the superintendent. It's certainly not fair to the school district. They should be evaluated every single year and held accountable because ultimately the school board doesn't run the district. The school board governs the district. There's only one person that runs the district, and that's the superintendent. Are the school board members all participating in creating policy, new and revised ones, amending ones that might be dated? Are they asking questions about student achievement? We just got NAEP scores. Look at where we fell. 46 in the nation. Horrible, right? And it just doesn't seem like it's getting any better. And so school board members should be asking about what are we doing to improve student achievement? And are they voting in supporting educators and students? Like, is that their focus of their vote, or are they just voting because their pals said they want you to vote? Because believe me, there's plenty of school board members that they just rubber stamp, and that's not really, you want to be meaningful. You want them to be transparent. There's no reason not to be transparent. And decisions should always be made based on data. So how do we assess family community engagement? These are just some ideas. And so I'd love to hear from you guys, here on family and community involvement and communication and transparency and support for family engagement. Which one of these questions do you think is most important for that particular topic? Just read it and then just unmute yourselves. Like, what would you ask in your mind?
To me, the second stanza really stands out to me, communication and transparency. So, making sure that the school board members are actually communicating with, the community. And that could be just by showing face at some events and, making sure they're getting to know people and things like that. That could really make a big impact. But yeah.
Good. Yeah, very important. Anybody else?
I don't disagree with that. I focused on the family and community involvement piece. Just the more stakeholders that you get, the more ideas you get, and I think you end up coming up with better decisions that have greater support too. And
Great.
I also see it as more of I envision myself as more going to be more of a proactive board member, and so something that gets out and then brings the community in, and you get out in the community too and involve them is important.
Great. Yes. I mean, getting diverse perspectives is so important. Okay, so we're going to move on to like an activity now. And so here we go. Imagine you're a part of a group of parents and community members and evaluating 3 candidates that are running for school board. And following a brief description, I'm going to give you a brief description on each of the candidates. And as you read through, I want you to consider how each candidate engaged the community. So here we go. So candidate A has been active in the community for years. They regularly attend local events. They listen to parents' concerns in town halls and frequently post updates on social media about the upcoming school board meetings, because that's a big thing too, right? People have a lot of trouble finding those links. So that's a great thing. They often highlight feedback from parents in their posts and encourage families to get involved. At the beginning of their campaign, they conducted a survey to understand the key concerns of the community, and they also provide materials in multiple languages and host meetings at different times to ensure families can attend. That's candidate A. Candidate B has been somewhat distant from the community. They haven't posted much on social media, and when they do, their posts are often general. In the last month, they held one public meeting, but the time conflicted with many family schedules, and there was no follow-up afterwards. They haven't shown much interest in gathering input from parents or involving them in decision-making. Feedback from the community members indicates that they've missed opportunities to directly engage with families and have not been responsive to their concerns. Candidate C is known for engaging with some parts of the community, but they tend to focus on small groups of families. They hosted a couple of forums and shared updates about their positions through email and social media. However, the forums were held at an inconvenient time for some parents, and many felt the discussions didn't dive deep enough into their concerns. Candidate C is often responsive to emails, but doesn't consistently share information on a broader scale. They do not always engage with diverse groups within the community, and there is a limited outreach to families in underserved communities. So now we're going to deep dive into this. What stood out? First of all, which candidate, think in your head, would you want as a school board member? That would be the first step, right? So unmute and tell me who and why.
Candidate A all day.
Yeah, can you go back to those descriptors again to the slide before?
Yes, of course.
It's clear to me that candidate A is the one to choose because the breadth of community involvement and the consistency of community involvement. It wasn't as in B or C, hit and miss or with smaller groups. That candidate tended to reach out to a lot of different people in the community and provided materials in multiple languages.
Yeah. And the whole description is positive. The narrative there around candidate 8 is positive. There's not any buts. You know, they did this. Candidate B and C both have limitations
Yep.
in the narrative.
Okay. Anybody else?
Nothing different to add. I mean, candidate A is the one who seems to care the most and shows it through actions.
So as you're evaluating the candidate, obviously what stood out to you was that they were really the full package, right? Like that's what I'm hearing you say. And you would recommend, so which candidate would you recommend based on their approach to family engagement, family and community engagement? And I think that's the idea, was to choose a candidate that really demonstrated this commitment to really engaging families. How do you think the candidate's engagement in families impacted their effectiveness as a school board member? So that to me is a big one. So you all agree candidate A is the better one, but how do you think that candidate will impact their effectiveness as a school board member? So thinking about, yes, they're engaging families, but how will that help them as a school board member?
Well, when they come armed to the board meeting with relevant information that they have received from their constituents, that gives them the rationale that they need to make the point they want to make.
Love it. That is exactly right. So this is just an example of an evaluation where you would pick, does the candidate involve the family in the decision making? Are they communicating well and being transparent? Are they supporting family engagement, culture and competencies and inclusivity? You know, are they showing respect for the diverse backgrounds and needs? And obviously, this candidate A was bringing things in different languages and trying to really appeal to all families and reading them where they were rather than expecting them to come to them. And I think that to me is where 5 stars, right? Like that's great. And so these are just a way that, I want you to think about how folks might evaluate you, right? And how you would evaluate a candidate moving forward. So after this presentation, you feel more prepared to evaluate and select the best candidate in school board elections.
The criteria is there, but I'm not sure about the means with which to
Can you
do
be can you be more specific?
it. Like it seems rather verbal, it's all verbal. There's nothing concrete to like earlier in the presentation, we talked about the possibility of having a rubric, to fill in,
Hmm.
something to fill in. But when everything is just discussion and it's not concrete enough for me. So I don't
So
have
you
to,
need data. You want data.
yeah,
is what
yeah.
you're saying. Yep. Good point. Anybody else? Okay. So obviously you're all running for office. So if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably not on the menu. You're probably on the menu. And so I thank you all for putting your time in to running. These are some of the key initiatives that First Aid Educate does. One of the biggest things that we provide is this training, and we will have trainings, as you know, throughout the next month, 7 weeks. We're trying to help you be successful as not just a candidate, but also when you're elected and you're sworn in and you become a school board member. So it's a twofold approach.